Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at this webinar on the topic of maximizing the effects of your change initiatives through influencer involvement. We are really excited to have such a diverse and global audience. My name is Zsuzsanna Blau, and I am the head of marketing and communications here with OrgMapper. And obviously, I will be your host throughout the event. Our speakers today include András Vicek, co-founder and head of research at Maven 7. And we have a very special guest, thought leader and world speaker on change, Leandro Herrero. András, as you can see, is a work and organizational psychologist, and he's responsible for research and product development at Maven 7, the company behind OrgMapper. He is a management consultant, a trainer specialized in social and organizational network analysis. Leandro, he's a psychiatrist by background who pioneered Viral Change, a mobilizing platform for creating large-scale behavioral and cultural change. He's also executive fellow at the Center for the Future of Organization and the founder of the Chalfont Project, a leading consulting group of organizational architects. The webinar itself will take approximately 60 minutes. We want to keep the event as interactive as possible, of course, so please do not hesitate to present your questions in the chat section. Or on Twitter, you can use our handle, which is @OrgMapper, as you can see on the slides, or by simply clicking on the raise hand icon. We will also, of course, have a Q&A session at the very end, and we'll openly answer all of your questions then. And now I guess let's just get started. András, shall we?
Yeah, thank you, Zsuzsa, for the introduction, and I'm really happy to have Leandro here with us as well. You know, we had a lot of great discussions around change, not only recently, but during some of the projects that we have worked on together. And I really love the whole viral change methodology and approach. So I think we'll have a great session today. But before we go into the topic, we would like to ask you a short question. The question involves something that is really, there has been a lot of talk in the space of change management. It relates to the fact that there's a lot of projects that fail, and there's all sorts of numbers coming that 70% of change initiatives fail, and other numbers going around. But anyway, there is a perception that although there are huge, large-scale change initiatives related to culture change, related to implementing new IT systems, somehow they just don't seem to succeed or go through efficiently or quick enough. Our question is, what do you think is the main cause for these change initiatives to fail? Is it something related to the processes and the project not being well designed? Or is it that the new technologies or the tools that are coming in during the change are not performing as expected? Or does it have to do something with the employees not understanding the need for the change? Or it can be something else. And please, if you click on something else, use the chat section in the right panel to write any comment that you have, what you feel might lead to the failure of change initiatives. So either select one of the options, or if you select something else, then please write your comments. Okay, so we already have almost 80% of the votes now. Actually, now it's above 80%. So if we can have the last few people cast their votes, that would be really great. Okay, We have, okay, 2 more seconds. Yeah, we're above 90%. Thank you all for participating. And let's see the results. So as you can see on your screen, 69% of the people actually say that one of the main causes, of course there are others as we know it, but one of the main causes is employees do not fully understand the need for change. That's a huge number, and it's actually around 70%, which is interesting. 10% say that it's related to the project and the design of the processes not being good enough. And more than 20% of you say that there's something else. And I don't know, Zsuzsa, do we have any?
No, no one said why they selected something else. But obviously, you still have time to let us know your thoughts later on, either in the question section or the chat section. So do not hesitate to send us why you selected something else.
But actually, I think that something else is something that we're going to talk a lot about with Leandro. So, because we really want to focus on understanding, what are the things around behaviors and employee behaviors that are causing the failures of these change initiatives. So, our next topic is behavior-based management. What we want to go through today is some of the main concepts of viral change, which has been developed by Leandro Herrero, and how these concepts relate to social network analysis and the identification of influencers and the involvement of influencers. Yeah, so I would be really interested to understand what you think, Leandro. What has the biggest impact on change? Is it new processes, new systems, or is it more related to employee behavior? What are your experiences?
Okay, thanks. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me, and I'm delighted to be here. You could say is all of the above. However, in my experience, over the years, plans have become more and more sophisticated. Technology, as people are saying, well, usually is not necessarily to blame, although obviously anything can go wrong there. Understanding change, well, depends on how you define the word understanding. But I think that the main problem around when we look at the data and I've experienced for many, many years is the behavioral side. I wouldn't call it necessarily the employee behaviors because it's everybody's behaviors, including management behaviors, but it's the behavioral side. Behaviors are the only things that have the power to shape a culture and therefore a cultural change or a transformation or change of any kind, including the one that has technology. If we don't get the behaviors right, technology could be there, new process and systems can be built up, new mapping, new structures, new reporting lines, but nothing may happen, or not to the expectations that we had at the beginning. So we have to have the behavioral side clear, what is the non-negotiable, what is that is the new DNA in behavioral terms that the organization needs for those changes to be active. It's not the other way around. It's not that the changes will create behaviors, that the behaviors need to be in the system or shape the culture.
I'm sorry, Leandro, to cut you off, but the sound quality coming from you now is really low. Is there any way you can improve? You can speak a little bit louder?
I'll try. I've been using the same system as in the testing before, so is that better now?
Yes, please speak a little bit louder so people can hear you better. Thank you.
I usually shout a lot, so that's no problem with me. Okay. So I don't know whether I left it saying in summary that the behavioral side is usually the focus of the problems, sometimes because we don't map them well or because we don't create the mechanisms for the behaviors to spread and to scale These are the only things that shape a culture and a transformation. Obviously, you need to have processes and systems and structures, but usually this is not the real problem. Obviously, you can get it wrong as well, as I said before, but the main origin of success or failure is the behavioral side of the change. And as I said before, not only employee behaviors, I would say management behaviors, is the behaviors of everybody, is the behavioral DNA of the organization.
Okay, thanks. Did you ever have, any clients or just discussions with companies where they were in some kind of change? Maybe they implemented a new IT tool, for instance, some kind of social collaboration tool or any other ERP system, and because they were not focusing on the behaviors of the people, they just at the end spent a whole lot of money on a new system, but people were not using it, and then the management were blaming the tool itself or the IT system itself that it's not good enough, instead of looking into what caused people not to start using it.
Well, you just have described it a very common situation, which goes back many years when the first customer relationship management CRM systems were introduced, and ERP and all these technologies that are supposed to create a collaborative environment, to call it something. And people thought many years ago that if you install the technology and the technology was good enough and allowed people the connectivity which didn't exist before or not as good as, that then behaviors happen and change will happen, meaning people would use the system and everybody would have a very good view of the customer or the internal process. The reality was very different. The reality was disappointing for many years. The satisfaction rate was not very good. Not many people use it. Some people still use the previous systems if they didn't have the need to go to a new one. So, and you are right. The traditional view was to blame the technology and saying, well, it's not good enough, or simply we haven't done a very good specifications, or we haven't involved the stakeholders. But that's not my experience. I mean, these days people involve everybody, too many people sometimes, and there are lots of testing, and lots of super users, and lots of technology can do anything you want. It is the behavioral side. If you don't have a collaborative environment in which you kind of voluntarily input data and do something knowing that this is for the common good other people are going to do, and you can get away with that without necessarily being called out, people may not do it. So the failure is the behavioral side. And then you have to rescue that sometimes, precisely looking at the behaviors. What kind of behaviors you have to have in the system to support the new IT or the new things that are there for a reason, because they are going to produce some benefits in terms of effectiveness of the organization, the process.
Oh.
So again, it's the same story as the beginning. The technology does not create the behavior. The behaviors need to be there to support the new technology, which in itself then will support new processes and ways of doing it. So that was a typical situation many years ago. It continues to be, perhaps a little bit less. I think even technology companies, technology providers these days acknowledge that they've been blamed many times for things that was nothing to do with the technology and had more to do with the culture, and they've been trying to then do something about it, sometimes knowing what to do, sometimes not knowing what to do, teaming up with other professionals. I think it's better acknowledged today that unless you have a behavioral fabric that is going to support the new transformation at any time, the technology itself is not going to deliver.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Leandro, for sharing this. Yeah, so I think we can all agree that new organizational focus is behaviors, not processes and the systems. All of these are given, but to change behaviors, you need something else, a new approach. And yeah, I would like to share a case study with all of you. We have been working with a service a company in the service industry. They had around 110 employees, and what their problem was that they had an existing financial ERP type system, but from their headquarters, international headquarters, they started to implement SAP. And 1 year after the SAP implementation, this company was not able to generate the reports, the financial reports on time to the international headquarters. And also they missed all of their deadlines. They had all sorts of problems with the usage of SAP. And it turned out that they were still using their old system beside SAP. So there somehow the shift to the new system, to the new SAP system, didn't really happen. And then, they asked us to map out, what was going on related to SAP in the organization. What you can see here is, each node represents an employee of the company. We asked, there was a short online survey through OrgMapper where, we had different questions. Two of the questions that we're visualizing here were, SIP-related advice-seeking behavior, such as which of your colleagues do you turn to for advice concerning SAP? You see the arrows going from one employee to the other, meaning that that employee indicated that he or she turns to this other employee. One other question that we asked was, which of your colleagues do you believe have the most reliable knowledge concerning using SAP? This is, of course, something that is not a connection. It just means that you know that a person has that type of expertise. And if you look at this network, you see a lot of incoming arrows pointing, for instance, to this person here, who seems to be an informal SAP person, because a lot of people are asking this person. The size of the node is big, indicating that they really see this person as somebody who has a lot of knowledge in SAP. On the other hand, you also see, an external SAP consultant here, this red person here, who has a lot of people turning to him for advice. On the other hand, you see some red nodes here and here as well, indicating that these are all external SAP consultants paid by the company, whose role would be to help people with SAP related questions, but people are not really turning to these people. It's not part of their daily routine. They don't know who to turn to. So this is all going down the drain. It's really a waste of money for the company. On the other hand, you see some employees who are starting to become these SAP experts who people turn to. So some things that they could do with the results was, of course, look at who this person is, look at this level of overload of connections is of course something they need to manage. So they looked into the job description of this person and changed his work design in a way that some of his work hours were specifically dedicated to SAP related consultancy and mentoring. And also, of course, they got rid of most of their external SAP consultants, and also from other influence-related questions, we identified people in the community who really other people turn to, ask for their opinion a lot of times, and they were involved in projects related to the SAP implementation. So in a half-year time, the shift took place. They were really able to generate the reports on time. They got rid of their old systems and fully used SAP. and of course the headquarters were happy, and the management of the local company was happy because of course they didn't get fired, because that was the risk that was going on. Okay, this is just one example again where you could clearly see from the informal structures and these networks that the behaviors around a certain new change initiatives will impact the success of that change. And now, as we already started to talk about social influence in communities, our next poll questions is around this topic. What plays a greater role in generating behavioral change within an organization? Is it a formal position? Of course, there are different hierarchy levels who are generating change, who are coming with new processes, new strategies, and having the formal position and power to influence people. On the other hand, there's also social influence. So you might have people from the employee levels who are not managers, who have a lot of social ties and talk with a lot of people, and people trust these people, and they influence others in the community. So again, the question is, what plays a greater role in generating behavioral change within an organization? Okay, we have 69, almost 70% of the votes. I know it's hard to decide because it's basically, of course, both of them have some kind of effect on the overall success, but please try to indicate which you feel has a greater influence. Okay, so I think we're just about to close the vote. So if you want, you can just finish, and let's see the results. Yeah, of course, after this case study, it might be, it might have been a little bit influenced, by this. But as you can see, almost 90% of you say that social influence plays a greater role in generating behavioral change than formal position does. That's I think huge, because I think if you would ask managers and decision makers, they might not even agree with that. So our next topic is mobilizing scalable influence. We've talked about behavior change, how important it is actually to change behaviors and not focus on processes or tools. Now the question is how you can do that. What influences behaviors? How you can mobilize and scale up this influence. And yeah, actually, before I show an interesting study coming from Nature, I would like to ask Leandro again, what do you think? What is the difference between the effects of the formal and informal influence during times of change? Because of course, you can see both going on when things are changing. But what do you see is the difference with formal and informal influence when we're talking?
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. We had finally some feedback that wasn't. People couldn't hear me. I hope that it's a little bit better now. If not, tell me again. I'm fiddling with the technology. But, okay, is that a bit better now? Could you hear me okay?
No, unfortunately, it's not better. I don't know what the problem is. If you can please speak really loudly into the mic and maybe a little slower, so we can make sure that we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. I'm frustrating because we tested that and it was okay, and I haven't changed anything. So maybe the weather in England that makes this a problem. I see my settings going well and high. So don't know what else to do. So I'll try. Stop me if at some point it's impossible to follow me. Um, you asked me about the influence mechanisms in the organization. We need to acknowledge, for the start, that the organizations that rich in influence are all sorts of kinds of influence there. The hierarchical influence, obviously, there is the authority by, I don't know, by moral authority, role models, technical expertise, people who have been there for many years and know what they are doing, people who are good and charming and have social skills. All that are sources of influence. But traditionally, management and certainly management of change has focused mainly on the hierarchical and saying, well, if that works well, then that's it. The reality is that hierarchical influence is there for a reason, has a place, has to do with setting the agenda, guidelines, reward systems, the vision and the rest. But when you come to shaping a culture, for example, for everybody, all the employees, the hierarchical influence is weak compared with the peer-to-peer influence, what you see around you and how other people behave and the environment that is close to you. Plenty of data supporting this. What is called peer-to-peer or transversal influence or horizontal. That is what
Yeah.
Edelman, that barometer, calls people like me are more influenced by people next to me or around me than by the CEO or the top leadership. That doesn't mean that they don't have power, but in shaping a culture, a transformation, a change, it matters most the powerful.
Um, yeah, Leandro, sorry, but it seems that we are still getting these comments from the participants that they somehow don't hear you. It might be something related to internet. So I think we will try to, ask you along the way, but if you can, I don't know, check say something technically, and also, if you can share with the participants after the webinar, and we can of course send it out to all the participants, the transcripts of all of these things, then that would also help, I think. But I think we can move on to this topic, where the next thing I would like to share with you is the study of the research team behind Maven 7, which is an interesting study which involved, uh, which is coming from Nature. What they did is actually put mini GPS receivers on homing pigeons. What we need to know about homing pigeons is that if you put them down anywhere around the world, they will find their way back home. What they were really interested in is, who is actually leading the flock? Is there some kind of hidden influencer within the group, or is it always the same pigeon who's in front, or is it just really changing minute by minute? What you can see here on the video is the actual, video of the data showing how these pigeons were flying back home. Here, this is the point where they put down the pigeons. You can see along the way they got a bit lost. They were actually following one of the pigeons, which was the yellow pigeon. But along the way, one of the pigeons showed them the right track, and they're turning on to the right way home. And from the data analysis, it turns out that one of the pigeons was actually the leader who is showing the direction to the pigeons. And it was not the yellow one, which constantly seems to be in front. It seems that he's leading the flock. On the other hand, as you can see in some cases, the yellow pigeon goes back in a lot of cases, looks at which direction the red pigeon is going, and then leading that direction. This means that we have a hidden influencer here, which is the red pigeon, who is influencing the behavior of the whole group. And it's not really transparent. It seems that it's the yellow one, but actually it's not. And this is the same thing that you can see in human communities as well. So you might see that there's someone who is very loud, seems to be very influential, but in a lot of cases you have these hidden influencers who are talking with a lot of people are asking them, they are inspiring, and it might not be someone who is the manager of the team. Here you can see, for instance, this is an IT company where we work. You can see their org chart on the left side and their informal connections on the right side. The same set of people, totally different structure. For instance, if you see, in the sales team, you have Liz, who is one of the employees. She doesn't seem to be, the most important person if you just look at the hierarchy or the formal structure of the organization. On the other hand, if you look at who people are actually communicating with during their daily work, you see that Liz is a real hub and influencer in this community. A lot of people from sales and also from other departments talk to her, and she influences them during these social communication activities. You can also see, for instance, Paul, who is the head of the project team. He is leading the most people in this organization. On the other hand, Paul is not connected directly with his own team members. He is communicating more and having social ties in the top management team, which is of course great, but how is he actually influencing his own people when things are changing? So these are the types of information you really need to know when things are changing. Who are the list type of influencers who you need to involve? Which are the organizations where you definitely need to do something because people are, the groups are falling apart into smaller subgroups. It's becoming fragmented, and information is probably getting distorted. One other thing that is important about informal ties is that there are several studies which have shown that even behavioral patterns spread through these social ties. There's a scientist called Nicholas Christakis who had several studies on the impact of social ties on behaviors and even on health. One of the things that he'd shown is that quitting smoking spreads through social ties or is influenced by your social connections. Happiness or your moods are of course influenced by the moods of others within your community, and even obesity is something that has been proven is influenced by your social connections. And here's an example of why it is really important to focus on informal communication during times of change. We have worked with an organization where they were using only the formal channels. This meant typically newsletters or a presentation by the CEO. And in one case, there were two things happening at the same time. First, they sent out a newsletter which was about moving to a new office. Then in 2 or 3 weeks, they sent out a next newsletter which was talking about layoffs at the company, that they were going to send away 20 people. And the interesting thing was that it had actually no connection. The move to the new office and the layoff, but people somehow combined these two sets of information in a way that they concluded that the management actually made a mistake. They rented an office which was too small, And that's why they have to fire 20 people. And this is, of course, just an example of people, when things are changing around them, they will have emotions. And when they have emotions, of course, they go to this change curve. You most probably, you have heard about the different phases of this. But the most important thing is when emotions are coming, and they are really coming when things are changing around you and you're moving out of your comfort zone, you most likely start to discuss the change with people who you trust, people who influence what you think about a change. So if you only focus on the formal side of communication, you will miss out on the main happenings during the change, because you have to know, who are the list type of people who can explain to you, why we're moving to the new office, who can explain, why there's a layoff at the company. But of course, you need to explain and involve them in these types of change processes. Otherwise, what you will experience is resistance from the people, not understanding, and also their behaviors won't change. Something that again goes back to social influence. Here what we are visualizing is on the left side, you see we have indicated with the red nodes the top management members in an organization, where the people who are the gray nodes are connected if they discuss information around changes with each other. Here on the right side, we see the same organization, but we have highlighted some of the key influencers, the hubs in this community. What we see here is if people pass on the information to their direct connections, even in the first step, when you just directly share the information or discuss this type of change with your direct connection, the influencers reach more than 3 times as many people as top management does, which is okay. I mean, we have seen this in almost every case. Top management are typically focused with external communications and also a lot of communication on the higher management levels. But they need to know that there are people on the lower levels who will actually influence what people think about the change. Second step, third step, it's even more obvious. Yeah, and I think there's another important topic we wanted to discuss, and it's of course goes back again to Leandro's viral change methodology, which is how you can accelerate a new culture or a new corporate narrative through storytelling. And yeah, let's see. I hope the sound quality will be better now. Leandro, what do you feel is the role of stories and accelerating change and shaping an organization's culture through these storytelling activities?
Okay, let me test again. Is that better, worse, the same as before?
It is much better, Leandro. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay. To the question on stories. Stories are a wonderful currency for accelerating change because produce something that in social science is called for many years social proof, meaning organizations sometimes lack a bit of self-belief that things could happen, change is not for us, we are too big, we are too small, we are dinosaurs. So this lack of belief that anything good could happen at a pace, and the presence of stories that says, actually, this is already happening. We have little changes there, and the broadcasting and spreading of relatively small if you want, stories of success accelerate the pace of change enormously. So we always have a storytelling track within the 5 components of our change: behaviors, informal networks, peer-to-peer influence, stories, and then leadership. So stories are almost key to success in some cases, provided that people use them well, broadcast them well, and obviously they get the recipient, because it's no point to have a little local story that nobody knows about it. The story needs to be highlighted, brought very soon into the system, not to wait until the last minute of the second year when big changes appear. I want the stories to come up as soon as possible, telling everybody this is already happening. So it's, this element of social proof, as it's called, is a key element of storytelling in the management of change.
Okay, thank you. That's really exciting, and I think it's something that is really new, and connecting all these concepts around, how behaviors matter more than processes, and the role of social influence in the change acceptance of the change process, and the change of the behaviors, and also how these stories can actually help to build up the new corporate narrative, is just really great. And yeah, we would like to just summarize with some key learning points, which I think went through along the way, but I think we can just sum it up. Yeah, behaviors and values spread in these human networks, and social influence is key in generating this type of behavioral change. And also, formal position has actually less importance than is expected by typically the management of a company. And you can use this type of approach with the identification of the influencers and in their involvement in the change initiatives to accelerate change. And yeah, and if you use this type of approach, you will have a much more committed group of people who will help you become the representatives of the change, and through the storytelling can help to build up your new cultural narrative. Yes, and we would like to leave some time for your questions. So, Julia, can you?
Yes, thank you, Andras. And of course, Leandro, even though we couldn't hear you very well, we will try and get a transcript from Leandro so we can send it to you so you can see his responses to the questions. So again, excellent insights on identifying the most influential employees across an organization. And I hope, even though you might have not been able to hear everything perfectly, that everyone in the audience is now thinking about ways they can benefit from this approach. So with that said, let us move on to the Q&As. We have a few questions already that I received during the presentation, but I encourage you all to send yours now if you haven't already. And so let's see. Okay. Can you talk more about how processes don't bring the change about that we seek? Why do they don't change behaviors? What happens to processes that cause them to fail to bring about change? So thank you, Mike. Mike is asking about why processes don't bring about the change in behaviors that we seek.
Yeah, I think we after the question we've touched on that, but yeah, I think you can design really great processes, but if people were actually not part of the whole way of figuring out these types of processes and are not feeling involved along the way, people like to do things the way they did previously because it's their comfort zone. Whenever you're changing something, you're trying to move them out of something that they're used to. So if you're just putting even something that is really well planned, you're putting that in front of them, they might understand it, the logic behind it, but they will not feel it as part of, their own way of doing things. So that's why it's really important to involve influencers as soon as possible, even when you're designing the processes. Because if you involve them, you might have really great ideas. For instance, we worked with one of the companies where they had a project to save costs, and one of their physical workers had great ideas on how to improve their processes, who was one of these influencers. And because he could directly discuss it with a senior manager, they could implement that very, very quickly. It didn't go through a long chain of decision making and got lost along the way. So it actually helped to improve these processes.
Thank you. Teresa is asking how we identify who is talking to whom and who the influencers are, as per the Liz example that you showed before.
Okay, thank you, Teresa. So basically, OrgMapper is an online tool where you can set up a short survey where you have questions that everyone in the organization receives, which is related to who do you turn to for advice related to a certain topic, who influences you in certain areas, who do you discuss changes with, and all these types of questions. And from these answers, we then generate the list of influencers and identify the different types of roles in the organization who can be involved in these change initiatives.
Okay. Also, Teresa, what response rate do you typically get to the survey?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it depends a lot on the size of the organization. So when we're going above, 1,000 employees or 1,000 respondents, then the response rate becomes a little bit lower. But I would say that around 60% is typical.
Sandy is asking what the top 3 characteristics of key influencers are that we should look for.
Yeah, that's a good question, and we had a lot of discussions around this with Leandro recently. But yeah, we have basically 5 characteristics that we are looking for. One is, of course, communication, how well these people or these influencers communicate with others. Then it's a certain type of mobilizing capability, how they can inspire and motivate others through these social connections, because that's, of course, very important when things are changing around you. It's also a sort of leadership, people who can help you to find the direction when you can turn to for advice, who will lead you, who will help you to find your way. And it's also people who are really ready for change, so they are capable of adapting to a lot of things that are changing around them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have a question from John about to have a successful analysis project, is it essential to involve the entire organization in the project or just a certain departments?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, typically we get that question. Well, because it's actually an involvement-based process, we really want to ask everyone in the organization to participate, because the process itself, when we're asking people to fill out a survey, is like an election process. So once you can fill out a survey, you nominate people, or you select people who will actually represent you in change-related programs. You want everybody to have that type of feeling that there's someone there for you and you have been involved in this process.
Another question from Mike. Do you ever see any correlation between response rate or communication in cultures where there are poor relationships between management and employees versus where there are good relationships between management and employees?
Good question again. A lot of times it's really interesting, because how we worked with the client was that the senior management initiated the change. It was like, for instance, I can think of one of the specific clients. It was a cultural change. A lot of things in the industry was changing, so they also had to adapt to it with some policies and some cultural change elements. But actually, the board members were not really open to going down to the lower levels and discussing these changes with not even the middle management. So they just said to the HR and the internal communication people, look, this is what we want to focus on, so please do something about it. So they basically passed on the whole change to lower or HR to HR people, and then the HR had the concept of, what should we do? I mean, the board, the highest level, is not really supporting us in the top-down communication. So we have to turn the whole thing around. We have to start from the people. I mean, from the employee level, and then actually that's where we identified the influencers, and then the HR and some of the middle managers worked during these workshops. And then when the senior management and the board see how well these workshops were going, they became really excited, and it basically built the relationship between the management and the employees. So the program not only helped to accelerate the change, but it also helped to bring back this type of connection between higher and lower hierarchy level people.
Thank you. And the last question, if you have more questions, this is the time to send them. How do you handle communication to employees about an influencer identification process? Thank you, John. So how do you handle communication about the process itself to employees?
Yeah, because we are asking people to fill out a questionnaire where they have to actually select the names of people, or their colleagues, their co-workers. It's always important to communicate the process in a well-defined and well-designed way. And the way we do it is, of course, you need to have the plan of how are you actually going to use the influencers? What is the program that you are going to involve them in? Is it a workshop? Is it any type of other activity? People need to know when they're filling out a questionnaire what they can expect, and the influencers who have been identified, they need to know what they can expect to be involved in after the process. So you also need to communicate the process to the senior management, middle management, and then to all the employees as well.
Thank you, Andras. It seems we have no more questions for today. Oh, there is one more. Sandy, what's the best way to recognize these influencers?
Yeah, thank you, Sandy. Yeah, it's always important that most of the inspiration and the reward comes from their colleagues, because they have been actually nominated by their co-workers, and these people who have been come out as influencers from the survey feel really super happy and super motivated to take part in any type of initiative, because it's a very strong enforcement from others within the community, saying that you've done a good job at building trust, at helping others and helping the management with communication. So people are typically very happy and motivated to take on this type of role, actually, and also to show that they are influencers in a group is itself rewarding, because everyone wants to show to their managers that they are important people in their community. But you can also find ways of involving them in programs where they can set up their own projects, for instance, and that works really well when there's a change and they have a certain budget which they can decide what they're going to spend it on, which is of course related to the change itself. But yeah, that can be something that is rewarding.
Excellent. We really don't have any more questions this time. So once again, thank you all for participating in our change management webinar today. Again, apologies for the technical glitch. Hopefully we will be able to correct that in the recording which we send out. And so a follow-up email will definitely be sent out to you soon. Also, don't forget to connect with us on social media if you can, and hope to see you again soon, all of you. So have a lovely day, everyone. Thank you for coming.